The writer's strike is over. Or is it? Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And first things first, I want to say thank you to all the people who have subscribed, because we have now 28 subscribers, which is precisely 27 more than I ever expected to have. I'm so glad you're all here, and I'm so glad you're all listening. And tonight, I have special late-breaking news for you. It's not actually late-breaking. Late-breaking would assume sort of that I was the one breaking the news, as though this is some sort of news that I am creating. No, it is in fact not news I am creating, it is news I am relaying. I am relaying news to you. And this late relayment of news to you is that the writer's strike between the WGA and the AMPTP, that evil conglomerate of studios, is tentatively over. The WGA and the AMPTP have agreed to terms. There are some final details that are being hammered out by the attorneys, because the attorneys do have to fill out their billable hours, same as anybody else. But the final deal is looking like it is done. The WGA negotiating committee appears to be very happy with the deal. It appears to have hit the basic benchmarks they were looking for in minimum writer room staffing concerns, in residual concerns, and in AI protections. Now, we've talked before on the podcast about the problems of AI and the risks of AI, especially in the creative world. I won't reiterate those here. Just know that if the WGA agreed to the deal, it likely hit whatever minimum benchmark they had in mind for protection. On the residual side, it's been widely publicized this summer that all of these shows on streaming, they play for billions and billions and billions of hours. They make gobs of money for the streamers, and nobody from the show who worked on the show or created the show sees a dime, except for the studio, whose only function in putting it on the streaming service was to license it. Now, this should be rectified in the newest agreement. Should be. I don't know. Does that mean the strike is over? No, it does not. Because while the deal has been agreed to by the negotiating committee and by the AMPTP, as in all labor negotiations, the agreement, once finalized, will go to the WGA's membership for final approval. And the WGA membership can absolutely still reject the deal. Something to keep in mind, why usually in most labor negotiations, negotiating committees are very, very careful in the language they use to talk about a negotiation. Aggressive but restrained, usually, is because they also have to sell their membership on the deal at the end of the day. In this case, this appears to be a capitulation by the AMPTP, essentially a recognition that agreements that were done 3 years ago or more years ago cannot keep up with the rate of inflation. They had to be redone. They had to catch up with everything that was going on in the world. So the strike does not end. Now, the WGA at some point, once the deal is finalized and sent out to the membership, at that point, the WGA is likely going to call off the strike and essentially say, in good faith, prior to the ratification of this deal, we can all return to work, knowing that in the worst case scenario, the sky falls, they can pull everybody back off of work. Now, I want everyone to keep in mind, it's been a big labor summer. UPS drivers got a huge contract out of UPS. And that was a big deal, like billions and billions of dollars in new benefits and new pay for drivers, which is great. UPS drivers are out there working hard. They make the postal workers look silly. Sorry, postal workers. It's not your fault that you look silly. It's the fact that you work in an underfunded, quasi-private, quasi-public company. It just doesn't work for you. Doesn't look good on you. But UPS negotiated. They got a huge deal. Now, what happens? What's the practical effect for those of us in the industry? Well, those of us like myself who are actors, we are members of SAG-AFTRA. So the WGA deal does not have much of an effect on us, except for the fact that we celebrate it. And my hunch, which is not confirmed by anyone, it is merely a 10-minute with Nick hunch. It is off the top of the dome of 10 minutes with Nick. I think the unions are sort of working kind of hand in hand, sort of handshake deal. Don't hit the microphone. Handshake deal. Handshake deal to say, once you get your contract, we'll use that as the benchmark for ours. We'll keep them close enough together that in the future, we won't let the studios, backdoor AI somehow through one of our contracts. Is that true? I don't know. I don't really know. I'm not involved in negotiations. Nobody will let me in. I've knocked on the door a few times. Nobody's letting me in. The nanny, Fran Drescher, won't let me in. For those who don't know, Fran Drescher, famously known for her role as the nanny, is the president of SAG-AFTRA. The more you know. So with the WGA agreement reached, we don't know what the final terms are yet. I'm curious to see. I'm very curious to see the residual model, because if there is a residual model, it means that the streaming services have been lying to us for quite some time when they kept saying, we really can't track how to do residual. They can. They've been able to do it for quite some time. It'll be interesting. I'm curious to see it. I'm curious to see what this does for the job market, for actors, actresses, and writers even as well. Don't expect too much don't expect a magic switch to flip in the market just to go back to the way it was. There is going to be both some wait for jobs to appear, and there is going to be an economic contraction. Post-strike, there always is. And then the market will expand again. But you have to remember, most of what's going to happen now is going to be trying to play catch up on network shows, for example, that have shortened seasons. Excuse me. Network shows that have shortened seasons. So that's going to be the focus of a lot of the studios. And there's still a lot of content out there that has not been put out that was filmed 2 years ago. So there's still that backlog of content that can come through as well. But projects will go back into active development. Development is an indefinite process, but at least they're developing. And that will be very, very exciting. But I want us to temper our expectations. When you see this deal, if it doesn't crush the AMPTP into a billion little pieces like you might hope it does, that's okay. Why? Because we still have to work with the studios. You're still going to go back to work to the studio. It doesn't, just because you were picketing, don't make it personal, right? Don't make it personal. You don't have to have any personal anonymity or personal enmity, which is a word. It's just a weird word. You don't have to have any personal enmity towards the studio. You don't have to have any personal, you don't have to have a personal grudge with the studio, right? They are, at the end of the day, the ones who provide the funding that allow the creatives like us to work and develop and do the things that we love doing. You don't have to like the way the system is set up, but that is the way the system is set up. Now, can you work to change the system still? Of course. I just don't advise holding up the contracts for work as a way to do that, because it's affecting a lot more than just the writers and the actors right now. If the deal is reasonable, which I'm going to bet it is, because the WGA has been on strike for nearly 150 days at this point, they weren't backing down without a fight. They had some very specific things they wanted, and the studios, I think, knew they could deliver on most of them. Just remember, this was a negotiation, not a personal battle between you and the evil billionaires running the studios. Every industry right now has evil billionaires. I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to do a lot against them. They're still going to be billionaires no matter how much you hate them. So, negotiate a fair deal. It's all right. And then go back to work and do what you love. And while you're doing what you love, maybe fight for legislation that would make it harder to be a billionaire. Just my thoughts. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to like me. But if you did like me, like and subscribe. If you don't like me, you can leave a hate comment. I currently have 28 subscribers. I'm excited to see where that number goes, either up or down. Should be a fun time. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.